Hello there, I'm Bonibert, and this is my biggest project yet. Now, the longest video I've made before is 12 minutes long. This video might be 2 times that length, I have no idea yet. Now, you may be asking me,
what video that's made by you could be so long?
And you probably saw the title, I'm going to be ranking every movie in the MCU. There are currently 30 movies in the MCU at the time I'm recording this, and all of them are going to be ranked in this video. Buckle up, because this video won't be like my usual shorts. Let's start with my least favorite MCU movie of all time, number 30, Thor: The Dark World. Now, I have talked about this movie many times on my channel before, and if you've been watching for a couple of months, then you know how I feel about this movie. It has one of the worst villains in the MCU. He wasn't threatening at all, he was just there. You're probably forgetting his name as you watch this video. His name is Malekith, and I doubt if I went up to anyone in the street, they would say that he's their favorite MCU villain. This movie doesn't have the humor that made me at least enjoy the first one. In terms of plot, there isn't really anything important besides the Reality Stone, and this movie isn't anything special. I'm tired of talking about this movie, let's just move on to the next one. And number 29, we have Captain Marvel. I don't want to talk about this for too long, but this movie's just bad. I barely even remember what happens in it. I mean, I guess Nick Fury was pretty cool in it, but other than that, I don't like it. I do feel like they should have introduced Captain Marvel a little earlier in the MCU. You know, so she has more development and we get to like her more. But no, this movie had to come out a month before Endgame did. And by Endgame, we didn't really know her that well. She only had her solo movie and that's it. If I had to come up with the one thing that was good about this movie, I would say it's the action. It doesn't have my favorite battles, but it's pretty decent. That's holding it back from being at the number 30 spot. Okay, one more good thing is Nick Fury. Now, moving on to number 28, we have Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Midness. If I could come up with one word to describe this movie, it would be mid. I mean, look at this. The fight scenes and the Illuminati were mid. The jokes were mid. And the new characters were mid. Almost everything in this movie was mid. Now, one good thing about the movie was Wanda. I didn't actually hate her as a villain. I actually kind of liked her. But other than that, you'd expect a movie called The Multiverse of Madness to go through multiple universes, right? You know, maybe like 10 different universes that we get to explore. Nope. We get like a 26-second montage, and it takes place in 4 big universes. I would have much rather seen that we get to explore more of the multiverse, see what it's like. I basically said everything I said in the short that I made on this movie, and I don't have much to say. This movie's just kind of disappointing. It was way too overhyped for what it is. At the number 27 spot, we have The Eternals. Now, I used to not rank this movie because I hadn't seen it, but I know plenty about it now to know where it goes. Were the Celestials interesting? Yes. Were they cool? Yes. But did I like the movie overall? No. For me, there were too many main characters, and the plot was kind of boring. Not much to say here, it's just what I thought of the movie. Let's move on to number 26, which is Black Widow. The more I think about this movie, the more I dislike it. My favorite part was obviously Yelena and the Red Guardian. But other than those, the movie doesn't really have anything important for the MCU. I found it boring at some parts, and I don't think it needed to exist. The final battle was just some big CGI mess, when it could have been something so much better. Anyways, that's my thoughts on Black Widow. Let's get into the next one. At number 25, we have The Incredible Hulk. Now, this is definitely one of the most forgettable movies in the MCU. Heck, I think I've only seen it once and forgot that it existed. So, I don't remember much from this movie, but I remember not loving it. I mean, I don't think you really have to see this movie to understand the Avengers, which is the next movie that Bruce Banner appears in. So overall, it's pretty forgettable, not my favorite, but after this, we're starting to get into the okay movies, starting with number 24, Iron Man 2. Now, I said that we're getting into the okay movies, but that doesn't mean that they're good. Iron Man 2 is just a big step down from the first one, and you'll see where I rank it later. I didn't really like the main villain that much. He's definitely one of the more forgettable MCU villains. I mean, how do you go from a great first movie to a mid-second one? It's still better than the other ones that I've ranked so far. So let's get into the next one, which is number 23, Thor. Now, it's kind of the same reasons that I didn't like Thor the Dark World, but I like this one a lot more. First of all, this movie introduced Loki, which ended up being the big bad in the first Avengers movie. And it introduced one of my favorite Marvel characters, being Thor. When I was talking about Thor the Dark World, I said that it didn't really have the comedy that made me enjoy the first one. And yeah, this movie has some pretty good comedy bits. But the good things aside, this movie's pretty boring. The action isn't amazing, and it just goes a long time without any fight scenes. I found myself bored at many parts of the movie, and I don't like when I'm bored when I'm watching a movie. So it's far from amazing, but it's definitely not the worst. Now, at number 22, we have Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now, I'm going to start off with saying that I don't hate this movie at all. It's actually one of the more funny Marvel movies. But like the others that I've ranked so far, I found it forgettable. Nothing really special came from this movie besides the post-credit scene. Now, I can't believe I'm saying this, but there are way too many jokes in the movie that kind of took away from the plot. There wasn't really any balance between the two. There was just more jokes than actual plot, and I don't love that. Again, I don't hate this movie, it's just far from amazing, and that's why it's at number 22. Now, at the number 21 spot, we have Iron Man 3. Again, I think this is a downgrade from the original, but at least it's a little better than the sequel. The final battle was really cool, and there was some important development for Tony in there. But we all know about the fake-out Mandarin. Now, I know this made a lot of people mad when the movie first came out, and I can see why. I know the Mandarin is a beloved Iron Man villain, but they kind of just faked us out in this movie. It made a lot of people mad by it not being the real thing, and that made many people disappointed. Now, me personally, I didn't really care, but I know a lot of the comic book fans did. This is honestly the longest I've talked about this movie in a video before, and I've never really gone into depth about it. So I'm glad I got to talk about something new for once. Anyways, let's get into the next one, being number 20. Okay, this movie is interchangeable with any of the last three things I've talked about because they're all kind of equal for me, but this movie is just okay. I have a short talking about my biggest problems with it, but let me sum that short up very quickly. Gore the God Butcher doesn't get the screen time he deserves, and that's unfortunate because Christian Bale is a beloved actor. And Gore is a beloved Marvel villain. The comedy is kind of stale and forced in there. And the goats were very corny. And the final fight scene is the goofiest thing in any Marvel movie. Again, I said this all in the short that I made, but this movie just didn't do it for me. I don't hate it. I don't love it. It's just in the middle. Again, like I said, the movie is interchangeable with the last 3 or 4 movies that I talked about. Now, let's get into the good movies, starting at number 19, Ant-Man. Now, this movie's hilarious. You got things like the giant Thomas the Tank Engine and the interaction between characters. Now, this movie's far from perfect, but I just think it's a great origin story for Ant-Man, and Ant-Man's actually one of my favorite MCU characters. Definitely in my top 10. And that originated from this. Honestly, I think this movie's kind of underrated. I just think the next ones on this list are a lot better. Anyways, let's get into the next one. Number 18, Avengers Age of Ultron. Now, this is definitely my least favorite Avengers movie. I mean, it's definitely a good movie, it's just not the best. The movie had some great action sequences, it was funny, but compared to the other Avengers movies, it's just not as high for me. My favorite part of the movie was Ultron. He was very intimidating and actually kind of scary. He actually felt like a big threat. And he also had some comedic moments in there. Again, this is my least favorite Avengers movie, but it's still a good one. Let's get into number 17, which is Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, I had a hard time choosing this placement because the movies that I haven't ranked, I'm a very big fan of. So I guess you could say the next few movies are equal to me. Anyways, let's talk about Spider-Man Homecoming. Let's get the best thing out of the way. It's obviously Michael Keaton's Vulture. He was pretty intimidating, and I feel like he was a really good first villain for Tom Holland's Spider-Man to face off. He's not my favorite of the Tom Holland trilogy, but he's still pretty good. I obviously like this movie because Spider-Man is my second favorite Marvel character, behind Moon Knight. I really enjoy this movie despite it being at number 17. Like I said, it's equal to the next few movies that I'm going to rank. Let's get into those, starting with number 16, Captain America: The First Avenger. Now, I think this is a really good backstory for Steve. I love how this movie takes place in a different time era as the modern MCU. It really makes the story feel unique. Sure, it doesn't have the strongest plot, but I still enjoyed it a lot. That rhymed. I feel like this movie's a little underrated because I've heard a lot of people say it's bad, but I'm here to tell you that it's actually kind of good. So maybe give it a rewatch. Maybe your perspective will change. That is, if you thought it was bad before. Number 15. Yep, that's right, we're halfway there. And number 15, we have Doctor Strange. Now, I believe that this is one of the more underrated Marvel movies. I'm not saying it's underrated because people think it's bad. I'm just saying people don't talk about it enough. The movie has amazing special effects. It's some of the best special effects in the MCU, in my opinion. None of it looks fake, and it's just amazing. And because the special effects are amazing, that makes the fight sequences amazing. This movie has some of the most unique fight scenes in the MCU. And without the great special effects, the fight scenes wouldn't be as memorable. Now, I should have mentioned this before, but another reason I don't like Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is because it's a huge letdown. The first one was really good, but the second one, I just wasn't feeling it. I mean, sure, it had good special effects, but the fight scenes weren't anything that special. That's the complete opposite for this movie, and that's why I love it so much. Sure, it's not hilarious like a lot of other Marvel movies, but that doesn't mean it's bad. This movie's actually pretty great. Number 14, Black Panther. Now, I know this is in a lot of people's top 5 Marvel movies, but I'm not the biggest fan of it. Don't get me wrong, the movie's amazing. It's just not my favorite. Yes, Killmonger is an amazing villain. One of the best in the MCU, I would argue. The setting of Wakanda makes it feel unique because it's not just a city from the real world. It's actually pretty cool. Again, this movie's amazing, it just couldn't get in my top 10. Number 13, Spider-Man: Far From Home. Now, I'm going to start off with saying that this is my most watched Marvel movie. I've watched it a lot of times, so I obviously like it a lot, but not enough to be in the top 10. This movie's pretty hilarious. I laugh every time I watch it, and I laugh at new parts every time I watch it. Mysterio is actually one of my favorite MCU villains because of the power he has to manipulate people and cast illusions. I just think that's pretty cool. Oh, and he was a big part in one of the best post-credit scenes of all time. This man is a menace right here. Overall, this movie's pretty great. At number 12, we have Captain America: Civil War. Now, this movie's enjoyable from start to end. The fight scenes were really cool and fast-paced, and I never found myself bored. I mean, you got amazing fights like the airport fight, which is one of my favorite fights in all of the MCU, and also Cap vs. Iron Man, which is another one of my favorite fights in the MCU. Come on, it introduced Spider-Man to the MCU. And that entrance at the airport, that was amazing. This movie has development for a lot of characters, and it's just so action-packed and I love it. I actually like how the movie has a more serious tone, and it's amazing. But at the number 11 spot, we have Captain America, the Winter Soldier. This movie is amazing, and it has a lot of the same reasons that I like Civil War. The action is fast-paced and awesome, and there's development for a couple of characters. The fight scenes were really cool and very fast, and I just like them a lot. And I loved how it was a spy thriller and all that. It was pretty different from the other Marvel movies at the time. Now, when I first watched this, I didn't love it that much, but after revisiting it, I loved it. And it had a pretty big impact on the MCU. Now, it's time to get into the top 10. These are the best of the best in my opinion. So, let's start the top 10 off with Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. This movie is very entertaining. I was really never bored, and it was actually pretty funny. It had amazing and quick and smooth fight scenes. My favorite one was probably the one on the bus. And this movie tells a different story than a lot of other MCU movies. And I like it for that. And me personally, I think Wenwu is one of the best MCU villains in recent time. But that's just me. Now, I know a lot of people who haven't seen this movie, so I always try to recommend it to them. Because this movie is actually really good, and that's why it's in the top 10. Now, let's get into number 9, being The Avengers. Now, this movie is an MCU classic. It has so many classic lines, classic battles, and it even introduces classic locations to the MCU, like Avengers Tower. Although this isn't my favorite movie in Phase 1, it's still amazing. I enjoyed it from beginning to end. And I'm going to say that a lot about the movies in the top 10, so get ready for that. Not much left to say here. I've talked about this movie a lot on this channel, and I think it's great. Let me take a minute to thank the sponsor of this video, the subscribe button. Now, I'm not monetized yet, but if I do reach 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours of watch time, I can be monetized. So if you enjoy this video so far, make sure you subscribe. It helps out a lot. At the number 8 spot, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. This is an amazing sequel to an amazing movie. This movie's very colorful, and the soundtrack, it slaps so hard. I listen to it all the time because it's just so good. Now, I know a lot of people that don't like this movie, but I'm not going to let their opinion affect mine. I love this movie. I remember seeing it in theaters when it first came out, and I absolutely loved it. I thought Ego was pretty cool, and me being a person who loves the first one, this movie does not disappoint. This movie's great. Let's get into the number 7 spot. Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Okay, so I have posted a longer review on this movie, but I'm still going to talk about it in this video. Unpopular opinion here, but I actually like this one more than the first one. It really hits you in the emotions at a lot of parts of the movie. The action's great, and it has some funny comedy bits in there. The new characters it introduces are alright, but Namor is definitely my favorite. It's not the best movie in Phase 4, but it's definitely up there. Let's get into the number 6 spot. Avengers Infinity War. Now, let me start off by saying that this movie has probably my new favorite fight in the MCU, which is the battle on Titan. It's so cool seeing the Guardians team up with the Avengers and seeing Iron Man beat the crap out of Thanos. Speaking of Thanos, he's probably the best part of this movie. He's cool, strong, and he's a pretty deep character. He's definitely my favorite MCU villain. He was the perfect big bad for the Infinity Saga, and I wouldn't have done it any other way. I mean, look at this man's moves. Sure, Bully Maguire's might be better, but Thanos, you better watch out for him. This movie's great. It's funny, it's amazing, it's cool, and that's why it's at the 6th spot. But the next ones, I just believe are better. Number 5. Spider-Man No Way Home is the best movie in Phase 4. There's a ton of character development for Peter, and I love how they brought back the old villains. Willem Dafoe's performance may just be one of the best performances that I've seen in a superhero movie. He was scary, he was funny, he was amazing. It was just great. This movie's pretty funny, although the humor isn't the strongest part. The strongest part is how they brought all three Spider-Men into one movie. It's just so cool. Anyway, I won't waste your time talking about this movie. Let's get on to number 4. Number 4. I said it once, and I'll say it again. Thor Ragnarok has almost everything you would want in a Marvel movie. It has amazing humor while still having a lot of serious moments. And it has amazing fight scenes. And the Hulk. Now, one reason why I like this movie so much is because it's such a big step up from its two predecessors. And it's even a lot better than Thor Love and Thunder. Taika Waititi did a great job with this movie, and I enjoy it very much. Let's move on to number 3. Yep, that's right, we're in the top 3. This movie kickstarted the MCU. It's amazing. It's Iron Man's backstory, and it's just flawless, really. Well, okay, there is no such thing as a perfect movie. This movie gets pretty close to it. It has a lot of funny moments in there, the action's great, and the CGI from 2008 is better than a lot of Phase 4 products nowadays. Now, believe it or not, I hadn't seen this movie until last year. Now, I'd seen bits and pieces of it, but I never knew how good it was until I watched it. This movie is truly amazing. At the number 2 spot, we have Avengers Endgame. There isn't much to say about this movie. It has everything Thor Ragnarok has, but more. The final battle is probably my favorite battle in all of the MCU. I say that about a lot of things, but I'm pretty sure that's true for this one. The ending with Iron Man's sacrifice is beautiful. It's the perfect way to end off the Infinity Saga. It brings all of those past movies and brings it here. And it's beautiful. Now, this movie's amazing. It's even wonderful. But I can hear you asking me,
Hey Barnaby, what could possibly be better than Endgame?
well, I'm glad you asked. The number 1 movie in all of the MCU is Guardians of the Galaxy. I never get bored when I rewatch this movie. The characters are definitely the best part, but the plot and the action, they're also amazing. The way the characters interact with each other is just hilarious, and we kind of get to see them form a family in this movie. This is one of the best origin story movies out there, in my opinion, and I adore the ending. Peter Quill saves the galaxy by dancing, and, well, that is the best final battle in all of the MCU. Okay, we're finally done with the ranking. If you made it this far, thank you all for watching. I worked really hard on this video, and it took me a long time to make. I'm sorry there hasn't been an upload for a few days, but share this with someone you think would like it. If you made it all the way here, make sure you subscribe, and that's a cut.